Welcome to PM Movie Recaps. Today's pick is an action and sci-fi of 2021, The Tomorrow War. If you're ready, let's enjoy the video. The film opens in Miami Beach as Dan Forrester and several other soldiers fall from the sky amidst a devastated landscape. Dan lands in a pool alongside other people, who continue falling. In December 2022, biology teacher and former Green Beret, Dan Forrester, fails to get a job at a prestigious research center. While he is watching the World Cup at a Christmas party, soldiers from the year 2051 arrive to warn that humanity is on the brink of extinction due to a war with alien invaders called the White Spikes. The White Spikes will arrive in November 2048 and kill most of the humanity 3 years later. In response, members of the world's militaries are sent into the future through a wormhole device called the Jump Link, but fewer than 30% survive deployment to return in 7 days, prompting a worldwide draft. After a year of the draft and a growing anti-war movement, there is little hope for humanity's survival. Dan is later called to report for a draft. After undergoing evaluation, he learns that he meets the qualifications because he has already died between the present and the time leading up to the invasion. He has a device placed onto his arm that will aid him in time jumping. It is also revealed that Dan was a squad leader in Iraq 15 years earlier. Given 24 hours to settle his affairs, Dan goes to his wife, Emmy's job where she works as a therapist for people who return from the draft. Emmy tells Dan that there is one person who can help get the family to safety, but it is Dan's estranged father James, whom he resents for abandoning him and his mother a long time ago. Dan visits James, who doesn't trust the government and has gone off-grid. Before Dan can ask for help, James says he has never wanted his help, which infuriates Dan because that's the only thing he ever wanted from him, although James says that he would have only made things worse for Dan and his mother. Dan returns home to Emmy and his daughter Murray, having to inform them that he has been drafted. The two are heartbroken and hug Dan goodbye. Dan deduces with fellow draftee Charlie that in order to prevent a paradox, those drafted have already died before the war starts. The draftees are sent forward in time to a battlefield in Miami Beach, but few survive, having been dropped in the incorrect location above the city. The draftees are ordered by Colonel Forrester to rescue nearby lab personnel before the area is sterilized. The draftees discover the lab personnel dead but recover their research. Dan radios to command about the situation, and he is told that no help will be sent to rescue the stranded troops. Many of the draftees are killed except for Dan, Charlie, and Dorian, a battle-hardened soldier on his third deployment to the future. The survivors wake up in a military encampment in the Dominican Republic. Dan is asked to report to Colonel Forrester, who turns out to be his grown daughter Murray. She requests him to accompany her on a mission to capture a female white spike, which are rarer than the males typically encountered. They trap and cage the female, only to have hundreds of males descend on their position. As the helicopter with the female lifts off, Dan and Murray escape to a beach and radio for rescue. Murray reveals that Dan, dissatisfied with his life after losing the job, he abandons his family and dies in a car crash in 2030. Dan, Murray and the female white spike are transported to a fortified oil rig close to Port Nelson, where the jump link is located. Dan and his daughter work on a toxin that can kill the captured female. They find a match for killing the aliens, just as they start to breach the base. As the white spikes attack the base, the formerly captive female spears Colonel Forrester with one of her spikes. She plummets from the gantry and Dan follows her off just before he is transported back to the past with the toxin to mass produce it. Dan tries to give the toxin to the military so it can be sent back to the future, but learns that the jump link is offline, having been destroyed by the white spikes. The world has become chaotic with the news that the jump link is offline, foretelling the war was lost. While Dan brainstorms with Emmy, she deduces that the white spikes did not arrive in 2048, but came much earlier. Dan consults with Charlie and Martin, a high school student with an interest in volcanoes, and they theorize that the white spikes have been on Earth since the Millennium eruption in the year 946, and global warming caused their release when they thawed out and emerged from under the ice caps. Dan, Charlie, and Dorian attempt to get help from a government higher-up to allow them to take on a mission to Russia, but he denies them. Dan leads a mission to Russia with Charlie, Dorian, a few surviving future soldiers, and his father James to prove his theory. The team finds a crashed alien ship at the Academy of Sciences glacier on Komsomolets Island. They debate telling the world about the problem but decide to end the threat right then and there. Once inside, they realize that the white spikes are not aliens themselves, but rather bioengineered organisms possibly used as planet-clearing weapon or cattle by another alien race. The team injects several of the dormant white spikes with the toxin. This kills those injected but wakes the others, and most of the team is killed. Terminally ill with cancer and wanting to die on his own terms, Dorian remains behind to blow up the ship with C4 and the explosion kills all but one of the white spikes. Dan and his father track down the one female that has escaped. They attempt to inject her with the poison, but she bites her arm off to prevent it from spreading. After beating it further, Dan shoves the toxin into the female's throat and knocks her off a cliff where she splatters, officially ending all the white spikes for good. In the end, Dan, James and Charlie are the team's only survivors. Content: knowing that the war is averted, and humanity is saved, Dan brings James home to meet his wife and daughter, determined not to make the same mistakes that Murray had warned him about from her future. Thank you for watching, but before leaving, please make sure that you click subscribe and turn on the notification so that you can enjoy watching more videos like this.